Hey, what's up, you guys? Paul here. Long time no speak. I wanted to upload more videos in the last week or so, but as you guys might be able to tell from the tone of my voice, I'm actually coming off of a bit of a cold sort of flu thing. Yeah, I wanted to talk about this though because I thought it was pretty important. Konami recently did, for the first time in like many years, a sort of ban list explanation post where they kind of went into detail about the most recent ban list and sort of what it means, and I guess a little bit of the rationale that went into it. So I wanted to jump into this because I know that this is something that a lot of us talk about all the time, just on this channel, if nothing else. Where Konami doesn't really tell us why they hit things on the ban list. It's oftentimes just sort of like, here's the list, deal with it, and here's when the next one comes out. Or in more recent years, um, the next one will be in a few months. So I think this is really cool. It's just hopefully a step in the right direction. We're gonna go through it, and at the end of the video, maybe you guys can tell me your thoughts and reactions to these explanations. Because while they are pretty cool that they're doing it, I do feel that they're maybe a little bit lacking. But let's get into it. I won't spoil anything. So if you haven't already seen, yeah, this is on Konami's sort of blog post that they use, and this happened during the most recent Remote Duel YCS, which was this past weekend, December 10th, and I think it was the 10th and 11th or something like that. But yeah. So they say a new Forbidden and Limited list for the advanced format just took effect on December 1st, and it's currently in play for their YCS Remote Duel. Check out the big changes that were made that will affect this weekend's competition. So, newly forbidden, Mystic Mine and Curious the Lightsworn Dominion have joined the forbidden list. Mystic Mine had recently become a key card in competitive dueling, forcing many duelists to include cards in their deck that can get it off the field or risk losing once Mystic Mine is played. With it now forbidden, duelists no longer need to consider the possibility of this controversial field spell stalling a duel for several consecutive turns. So, yeah, Mystic Mine is banned, and it sounds like Konami was pretty aware that it was a controversial one, and they seem like, at least if this article is to be believed, that they did not like the idea of players maybe having to include lots and lots of removal for it either. So that's, your Cosmic Cyclones, your Twin Twisters, your whatever thing that you were using to deal with Mystic Mine, and have to sort of hard draw it. You guys know I wasn't like the biggest Mystic Mine fan. I certainly understood that the role that it played, but I was honestly convinced that Konami just was like, whatever, you guys have to deal with this card. So I'm glad that it's gone, and it sounds like it's for the reasons most people expected. That's kind of a trend in this article in general, is that most of this is kind of predictable reasoning, which is, well, I'll get into that later. But next, to talk about Curious, it is a popular card, especially among Terralment's duelists, because it was adept at sending cards from the deck to the graveyard. Most importantly, it can send a card of your choosing to the grave if it's link summoned. High impact cards like Eradicator Epidemic Virus or Deck Devastation Virus can go to the grave, and then you can return them to the field with Nightmare Griffin and use them to annihilate an opponent's chances of winning. So this prevents this from happening, and it deals a blow to decks like Tarlaments that made the most effective use of Curious. So again, this is something that I think most of us already had kind of understood to be the reason why, Curious was getting hit. Felt a bit late because not that many Terralements decks were necessarily running it, although plenty were. So I get it. It's just the start of kind of their trend of like hitting Terralements, hitting around Terralements, hitting like their external strategies and little things that they could do to maybe raise their ceiling or have blowout wins. So cool. Okay, next we go to the limited cards. So Tyranids have been dominating the advanced format. It's funny that they say advanced format here. It's not like there's really an alternative format to play in Yu-Gi-Oh! This is all you get. Ever since the release of Magnificent Mavens and the Fairy type of Shizu cards. These decks typically use 3 copies of Herald of Orange Light because it could stop an opponent's monster effect while sending one of these Shizu cards to the graveyard, allowing the effect of the sent monster to be used. So the new limitation on Herald weakens these decks and incorporated the Fairy type of Shizu monsters. This is really cool. I mean, that they are at least explaining maybe why they chose to go this way. I think that they don't want to like outright say that it was because these cards are new. Clearly, they weren't going to hit a Shizu cards or tier cards just yet. So Herald of Orange Light is just another kind of way around it, where like it does weaken the tier deck. Less outright negation is nice, and less ability to just sort of proactively trigger the Shizu Fairy monster's effects from the hand is good. So like it's a nerf, it's a slap on the wrist, but when I read it here, I mean I guess it makes some sense. They're trying their best to not hit the cards. Is all I really see here. Newly semi-limited, they just talk about Lyrilusc Recital Starling. Hasn't been popular in competitive dueling recently, so it might give the Lyrilusc deck a much needed boost. Shocker. Okay, now they talk about 5 cards that got removed from the list entirely. 2 of these cards, Dimensional Fissure and Macrocosmos, were previously both limited to 1. They remain on the field and will banish any card that would get sent to a tier limit player's graveyard, so it will shut down the tier limit duelist's plays, since all their monsters need to be sent to the graveyard to use their most powerful effects. The removal of these 2 cards from the Forbidden Limited list give other decks the power they need to defeat tier limit decks. Yeah, I mean, I think most of us gathered this much ourselves. It's just that, I know Defissure and Macrocosmos are strong against the deck, and they're certainly blowout cards, but it also feels like these are cards that can really hurt kind of more rogue or lower tier strategies, more casual strategies in general. So I'm not like entirely maybe on board with them coming back. I know people already don't like floodgates, and these can be some of the most obnoxious ones in the business. But, it sounds like once again, this is Konami's attempt to get around hitting tier cards by just making it a little harder for tier decks to exist in general. They also talk about Ptolemaeus because it can serve a similar function to those last 2 cards. You can Xyz summon Constellar Diamond on top of it, and it prevents monsters from being sent, or cards from being sent to the deck to the graveyard. So, yeah. This Then they talk about Metaverse and Tenki, which are kind of obvious ones. Okay, so just to fast forward on my opinions on this list, before my voice goes out, I will say this. Oh, and by the way, this is written by Michael Kohanim, who I assume is maybe part of Konami R&D. I don't know what the hell goes on at that company, but so I'm assuming this is coming from the horse's mouth. Although after you read it, one thing that I have to say about this article is that it does sort of feel like it's not really an explanation about why they hit things, more just here's what the intended effect of those things would be. So in that way, I kind of would have liked a little bit more detail in an article like this. I'm not going to shame Konami for doing it. I mean, it's the first time that they've done this in years, so no complaints about just the idea of it. I hope that they continue to do this. I think that every ban list needs this, at least this level of insight into kind of the decision making. I still think that it's an underwhelming ban list that people don't really like, and I think that people would have wanted something a little bit different. I think something that would have been interesting to include in here is why they chose not to hit the tier element cards directly, or whatever else, like Sprite cards directly, or Flanders cards directly. I know that might be getting a little bit too into the weeds that Konami doesn't want to reveal, and they don't want to maybe just say, oh, well, they're new cards, we don't want to hit them. But I do think that that would probably be more satisfactory answers. Anyway, though, when you fast forward this event, this was the top cut of the remote dual YCS. So Shizu Terramers did not take the 65% sort of tier 0 threshold that everybody talks about. But I mean, it's hardly any different. It's still more than half the spots, so it's very much it's in there. And it's a nice little mix of things in the rest of the spots. So did the ban list really help much? I guess it shifted the power balance a little. Perhaps, maybe. Eh. So, what do you guys think? I mean, do you think this ban list is effective? Do you think that their rationale that they are explaining? Oh, I didn't even show the picture. Yeah, this is the pie chart I was reading from. Sorry. Yeah, but so what do you guys think? Do you feel like these things that they talked about? Do you feel like they made a difference or no? I mean, I feel like it sort of slightly shifted the ratios, but I mean, really hard to say. So yeah, that's the Konami's sort of take on it. I'd love to hear what you guys think, how you feel about these changes and Konami's justification for them. All right, before my voice goes out, I'll see you guys in the next one. Pass turn.